and that's what they've been demanding from the community. The money of the previous Afghan government in the Western countries should be returned, and they should be given recognition. But the Western countries and the human rights groups have been saying that unless the rights of women and girls are restored, the groups have been urging that they should not be given any recognition until they restore the rights of women and girls.
And Barasan Etarajan. An inquiry into an administrative computer scandal at the UK Post Office, which led to thousands of its employees being wrongly accused of stealing from company accounts, has published its first report. It outlines what it described as a disastrous human toll and criticised the Post Office's attitude. The inquiry's chair, Sir Wyn Williams, said the findings were profoundly disturbing.
Many thousands of people have suffered serious financial detriment. Many people have, inevitably, suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence. Many businesses and homes have been lost. Bankruptcies have occurred. Marriage and families have been wrecked.
Well, our correspondent Rob Watson joins us now. Rob, tell us about the Post Office scandal. What happened?
So it's been described, Julia, with good reason, as the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history, which I think gives you a sense of why it's such an important story. It's also important because the sub-postmasters, the people running the 11,000 or so branches of the post office up and down the country where you take parcels or maybe cash your state pension if you're elderly, were and still are often at the centre of community life, particularly for those not particularly good at doing things online or digitally, Julia. Anyway, over 900 of these sub-postmasters were wrongly accused of stealing money, some of them imprisoned, thousands more used their own money to balance accounts, and all of it due, as you were saying, to a problem with a new software system which the Post Office denied for years and years. And what this report does is highlight just the sheer scale and depth of the suffering of these people, from bankruptcy to health problems, addictions, and even suicide.
And we heard a little bit about this from the inquiry's chair just then. It wasn't just the sub-postmasters who were affected, but their families too.
Yes, in addition to the thousands of postmasters affected, and it was thousands, this report considers for the first time the harm done to their children and wider families. And it's hard not to be shocked, Julia, by the stories of family heartache and breakup, even cases of children being taken away from their parents, young children, when they were put in prison for theft they hadn't committed. So what this report has suggested, and the government has approved the idea, is for compensation payments to family members, especially children whose life chances were affected by the Post Office's behaviour, although how they're going to prove that won't be easy. In summary, really, Julia, this is a scandal that is far from over, both in terms of the issues of compensation and, of course, the possible prosecution of senior officials at the Post Office allegedly responsible for this massive miscarriage of justice.
Rob, many thanks. Our correspondent, Rob Watson. You're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. Now, it may not lead to a new entente cordiale, but the state visit by the French President Emmanuel Macron to Britain is seen as a good opportunity to rebuild the cooperation across the English Channel. It is, after all, the first state visit by a French leader since Britain formally left the European Union more than 5 years ago. And Mr. Macron and his wife Brigitte were given a splendid welcome. Later, Mr. Macron visited Westminster Abbey, where he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and he addressed the British Parliament in Westminster with a speech peppered with both admiration and a good bit of humour.
It is a very great honour to speak before the two houses of the British Parliament, a place where modern democracy emerged and the principles of democratic representation and consent were born. In making its own rules, your great people has inspired the rest of the world. I'm not going so far as to say that England gave birth to the French Revolution. However, I have to confess that we love monarchy, but especially when it's not at home.
Well, apart from those nice words, there are also hard topics to be discussed. Well, I'm joined in the studio by our Europe regional editor, Paul Moss. Paul, the number one item on the agenda was immigration. Why is that such a pressing topic between two neighbouring countries separated by a substantial amount of water?
Well, like many countries, immigration is a big issue in Britain. Indeed, for many voters, it's the biggest issue. And what's really caught the attention of people here is what's called the small boats. These are the dinghies, other small boats that regularly cross the English Channel from France. 35,000 people came to Britain roughly this way last year. The boats often overcrowded, unseaworthy indeed. Tragically, some people drown. Now, the people who arrive here don't have visas. Many of them claim asylum. Some just disappear. And successive British governments have pledged to stop the boats. It's become a sort of slogan. But they failed. Now, the obvious way to do this is by having France's help in stopping people setting off from France in the first place. And it did seem, listening to that, didn't it, that Emmanuel Macron wants a good relationship with Britain, and Keir Starmer's hoping they can work out an agreement to get more French cooperation on this. That said, I have to say there are plenty of people in France who say, look, immigration is an issue we deal with in the European Union, working together on this. Britain, you chose to leave the European Union, so I'm afraid you're on your own here. So I think it remains to be seen whether they really can cooperation on this issue.
Well, another issue that's also on the agenda that they may be more in tune with is Ukraine. What are they hoping to get out of that?
Yeah, I mean, they are in tune, basically. I mean, in March, France and Britain together announced they would be forming what they called a coalition of the willing. This was back when there were hopes of some kind of peace deal, perhaps, between Russia and Ukraine, and the coalition of the willing would be the countries that would act as security guarantors for Ukraine. Now, that hope has sort of faded, I guess, but coalition is still there. Indeed, there will be a meeting of the coalition on the sidelines of this summit. And, you know, we heard President Macron say that he shares the British vision of how to protect Ukraine and the importance of it. He likes the idea of an independent Europe standing up to Vladimir Putin. The thing is, Mr. Macron also likes the idea of Europe standing up to Donald Trump, and here there's a big difference, because I have to say, like most British prime ministers, Keir Starmer wants to keep the American president on side. So in resolving how they're going to deal with Ukraine and indeed other global issues, there's a bit of work to be done.
And lastly, Mr. Macron has had quite a day of pomp and ceremony with the royals. It's not really a worthwhile use of everyone's time with so many important subjects going around.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, we heard Mr. Macron referring to the French Revolution. I mean, they're proud to be a republic, proud to have chopped the head off their king, and yet they do seem to like the sort of pomp, doesn't he? We saw him sitting in a carriage, being drawn by horses. There is a serious side here. Britain does regard its royal family as a form of soft power. You know, it's part of the deal to foreign presidents and prime ministers. Come here and you may get to meet the king, you'll get to ride in a horse-drawn carriage, and if you're really lucky, we'll throw a royal banquet in your honour. Which world leader could resist that? It looks like President Macron is enjoying it, and that really is part of the whole effort to get him on side with Britain.
No frog's legs on the menu, presumably. Paul, many thanks. Paul Moss, our Europe regional editor. Now, officials in Nepal say at least 8 people have been killed and 18 are missing after flash floods on the border with China. 11 people are reported to be missing on the Chinese side. This was the sound of the torrents of water which flooded the area around Rashwagadi. The floods also swept away the Nepal-China Friendship Bridge, which straddles the border, forcing all bilateral trade moving through that route to be halted. Navin Singh Khadka is our environment correspondent. I asked him what we knew about the situation there.
Very early in the morning, there was a sudden rise in the level of this river. It comes in from Tibet and flows through Nepal and ultimately mixes with the Ganges in northern India. So this had swollen quite significantly, and then it swept away this key trade bridge between China and Nepal. Around 4 hydropower stations in Nepal have been damaged. And not to talk about debris being swept down, and as a result, in many parts, instead of water, you'll see this brown sludge, which means there's a huge loss to the aquatic life in the river, and also this threatens critical infrastructure like barrages, dams downstream.
And there's this quite acrimonious war of words that suddenly erupted over this.
Rather than arguing with each other, I have seen 2 different versions. The Chinese media have categorically said that there was this incessant rainfall in northern Nepal, but when I checked with the Nepalese authorities, what they have told is there was no rainfall as such. What they've also told me is there was no early warning. And therefore, some experts are saying this might be a case of glacial lakes bursting out in Tibet, which has happened in the past. But the satellite imagery it's full of cloud as of now. So it needs to be clear up, and then we'll know what exactly happened.
In Nepal, it's mountainous area, it's prone to flash flooding, but it's apparently getting worse every year.
You talked about Nepal's topography, Nepal's geography. It's the same thing across the border in China. So all this glacial melting, permafrost thawing, and then that triggering landslides, mountains coming down, and blocking rivers and so on and so forth. Tibet, for instance, is one of those places which has seen expansion of water bodies. Just when, because of global warming, we are seeing water bodies disappearing elsewhere and drought and desertification, but Tibet, we're just seeing the opposite picture. There's this massive expansion of water bodies because there's this fast melting glaciers. All these snow-filled ice packs, they are melting. And as a result, what happens is a small trigger, any avalanche, anything happens, falls into those lakes, they tend to burst out.
Navin Singh Khadka. Now, it's a best-selling book and has been adapted into a film featuring the stars Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs. The Salt Path is the story of a couple who decide to walk England's 1,000-kilometre southwest coast path after their home is repossessed. Author Raina Wynn has been accused of fabricating or giving misleading information about some elements of her novel, which is presented as an autobiography. An investigation by the Observer newspaper suggested some of Wynn's claims about her husband's illness and the events that led to the couple losing their home were misrepresented. Raina Wynn has denied the accusations. Evan Davis had more from the journalist behind that investigation, Chloe Hajimafeo.
I started out with a load of documents from the land registry, and then through lots of phone calls, what I discovered was that Raina and Moth Wynn's real names are Tim and Sally Walker, and they lost their home actually because Sally Walker was accused of stealing tens of thousands of pounds from her employer, who was an estate agent in this North Wales town where she was a bookkeeper. They accused her of stealing over £60,000, and she was arrested and questioned by the police, and then subsequently borrowed £100,000 from a rich relative of Tim Walker's, her husband's. And that £100,000 was used to pay back the money that was missing from the estate agent and cover legal costs, but then it went on their house, essentially as a private mortgage. And when their rich relative's business went bust, the people he owed money to cover that debt and tried to recover it, and eventually the courts foreclosed on their home and gave it to the people they owed the money to recoup their debt. But the Walkers then essentially did lose their house, as they said, but under very, very different circumstances, when in effect Sally Walker was accused of criminal behaviour.
Right, and indeed you've also been examining the condition which in the memoir Moth, the husband, Tim Walker, is living with, and you find his experience there has been unusual.
When I spoke to neurologists who specialise in this condition, they say they've never come across anything like this. They've never come across anyone who's lived as long as Moth. The usual life expectancy with this illness from onset of symptoms is 6 to 8 years. It's tragically short. And Moth has been around for 18 years with this condition. He's not got any visibly acute symptoms, whereas people with that condition towards the later stages are very visibly unwell. Their body isn't responding. Quite often they have a lot of difficulty with speech, and towards the end of their lives they need 24-hour care. So neurologists that I spoke to were really sceptical. They said maybe he's been misdiagnosed, but in the books we hear that he's had lots of trips to the doctor and we don't hear anything about a misdiagnosis. I cannot prove that Moth or Tim Walker doesn't have this condition. His medical records aren't public, and nor would it be right for me to go digging into them. But he has made the details of his condition very public. I think it's right and proper now that we do raise questions.
One reaction to a memoir is, does it really matter whether it's true or not true? I mean, it is a description of a couple making a journey. A lot of people found it very inspiring, and I don't know whether the truth matters.
All the way along, this book has really been sold as a true story. That has been one of the major headlines behind it, and also, in very big letters in the trailer of the movie that's recently come out, which is supposed to be the true story of this couple. And I think, firstly, in this day and age when truth is under assault anyway, people have really been affected by this book. They've opened their hearts to this couple. And I think telling the public that it's true in that way and putting that centre stage, it does hurt the bigger picture of truth.
Chloe Hedgemafeu. In a statement, Raina Wynn described the Observer article as highly misleading and said she and her husband would be taking legal advice. You've been listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service.
In 30 minutes, we focus on Africa. Then don't miss the latest Tech Life. This week, the AI safe driving system that's watching the road and the driver. We find out about cargo drones parachuting in medical aid to parts of Central Africa. And what can children tell us about AI? At 21 GMT, it's Outlook.
Jack Beatson wanted to study history and business, but in 1960s Australia, those weren't considered suitable subjects for an Aboriginal boy. He was told to do woodwork instead. It's now his mission to help other Indigenous adults get the education they were denied.
And on the BBC World Service app, make sure to join DJ Edu for This is Africa. My guest is the multi-talented Shadow Chris from Ivory Coast. He's an artist and influential producer, but also, it turns out, a keen astronomer as well. There's lots more to explore on the BBC World Service app.
Hello, I'm Lee James, and this is Sport Today, live from Wimbledon on the BBC World Service, bringing you the sports stories the world is talking about. Carlos Alcaraz is aiming for a third straight Wimbledon crown, and the Spaniard progressed to the semi-finals here on centre court, while the women's world number one, Aryna Sabalenka, came through a tough encounter with the German veteran Laura Siegemund. All the action from day 9 here, and Chelsea face Fluminense in the Club World Cup semi-final. Join us in 2 minutes.
BBC News. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for 2 senior leaders of the Afghan Taliban. The Supreme Leader and Chief Justice are accused of crimes against humanity for persecuting women and girls. 3 crew members of a Greek ship have been killed in an assault off the Yemeni coast. The US Embassy in Yemen blamed Houthi fighters. It described the attack as the most violent yet. France's President Macron has told Britain's Parliament that the 2 countries must work together to become less dependent on the United States and China. Mr. Macron was on the first official state visit to the UK by a European leader since Brexit. Kenya's main human rights agency says that 31 people are now known to have died during Monday's nationwide anti-government protests. It says more than 500 people were arrested. Officials in Texas have faced fierce questioning over the rescue and recovery effort in the wake of Friday's floods that have killed more than 100 people. Reporters repeatedly pushed for details at a tense news conference. President Trump has harshly criticized his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, accusing him of duplicity. Mr. Trump asserted that Mr. Putin said nice things that turned out to be meaningless. Russian state media say a journalist and activist has been charged with treason following a series of raids by the security services. Pavel Andreev is accused of being in touch with agents of NATO countries. Spanish police investigating the car crash that killed the footballer Diogo Jota believe he was behind the wheel. They say the Portugal and Liverpool star was driving over the speed limit. Investigators found the tire marks on the road. BBC News.
Once again, Novak Djokovic is the king of Wimbledon. 4 hours, 57 minutes of pure sporting drama.
The world number one has conquered Wimbledon for the first time. Live from Wimbledon, this is Sport Today with Lee James.
Hello and welcome to Wimbledon at the end of day 9 of the championships, where 4 players have booked their place into the semi-finals in the men's and the women's draws. We'll hear about the toughest of tests for the women's top seed, Aryna Sabalenka. Double delight for the USA on court 1. Plus the first of the Club World Cup semi-finals, with Brazil's Fluminense taking on Chelsea. And the latest from the Women's European Championship, as Germany came from behind to beat Denmark. But first, the defending men's champion Carlos Alcaraz continued his quest for a 3rd successive title, beating Britain's Cameron Norrie in straight sets in their quarter-final on centre court. Alcaraz extended his winning streak to 23 matches, comfortably taking the opening set 6 games to 2, but he displayed all his brilliance. His serve was firing, his forehand unplayable at times. With the deft drop volleys thrown in, the match rapidly ran away from Norrie. Alcaraz taking the second set 6-3, then sealing a straight sets win 6-3 again in the third, when Norrie couldn't return another booming serve. He was well beaten, but so would many have been with Alcaraz in this form. So after victory over the final British player in this year's tournament, how was Alcaraz feeling after the match?
Just really happy with the level that I played today against a really difficult player like Cam. He's an amazing player. He's an amazing guy as well. I'm pretty sure there is nobody who worked harder than him, and I'm just really happy to see him, fighting for great things. So just happy to see him, playing these kind of matches, and happy to qualify into the final.
That is Carlos Alcaraz after his victory. The tennis writer from the Spanish agency FA, Manuel Sanchez Gomez, is with us. Manuel, Norrie totally out of his comfort zone today. Alcaraz, though, in all aspects of his game, especially strong. A real masterclass from him today.
Sometimes we request or we ask for the players to play their best in the first round, but it's now when it really matters and when you have to play at this level. I think everything or everyone in Spain expected an easy win, a comfortable win for Carlos, but not something like this, because he always has up and downs in these kind of matches, especially after against a defensive player as is Cameron Norrie, who is never gonna give up in these matches, but he's been completely classy today. He's enjoyed I think probably the most in the tournament, because he was able to hit forehands, he was able to drop shot, go to the net. Every time he went to the net, it was amazing to see how comfortable and how the touch, the silky touch that he had on the net. It was unbelievable. It was probably his best performance after having the best performance against Rublev. So I think it's the best level that we have seen so far in the tournament from Carlos Alcaraz, and I don't see any reason to not think that he's the big favorite right now.
Yes, after looking flat in that first round against Fognini, making the unforced errors, and it could have been one of the big upsets of the tournament, but the final solutions the best players do, and as you say, with a performance like that, is this Alcaraz now saying to the rest of the draw, I'm ready, I'm here we go.
At the beginning of the tournament, I was wondering, it's very tough to win 3 Wimbledons in a row. Only 4 players in the open era have done it. How is he going to do it? I mean, it's likely that he's not going to make it. So, but I knew deep in myself that it's going to be match by match, and in every match he's going to be the favorite. Doesn't matter who he plays. If he's physically well, he's going to be the favorite against everyone, and that's why I was worrying in the first round if he's just nerves or because he hasn't played in a year in the Central Court. It's okay. If it's something physically, I will be very worried, because it's the only reason that I can see right now that he's not gonna be on his best for these 2 matches that he still has ahead and be the favorite. So yeah, definitely. I just can't think of any reason to not consider Carlos Alcaraz the big favorite for the tournament.
We'll find out his opponent in just a moment, but he's got some time off now before Friday, so he's going to play some golf, which he seems to enjoy doing. He's been taking an Andy Murray, but this is with his team now, I think. Good chance for him to switch off, though, and enjoy that.
Yeah, there are 2 narratives about Carlos Alcaraz. One is Ibiza, as we have seen that someone in the stands was shouting at him when the interviewer asked him, what are you going to do in these 2 days off? And someone asked from the stands, Ibiza. He obviously doesn't have the time for that, but golf is a very important switch off for him. He tries to make it not every day, because the schedule never allows him to do it every day, but he tries to practice in the morning and try to play golf with his team. Samuel Lopez, Juan Carlos Ferrero, big fan of golf. I don't know how the score is right now with Juan Carlos Ferrero. I'm pretty sure that it's very competitive, but as they are not speaking out as they are doing with Andy Murray, for example, we don't know if he's the one that is beating his team in golf as well during these weeks in London.
Yeah, looking at his touch on that court, I imagine if it's the same on the golf course, then he's probably up at the moment. That is Carlos Alcaraz, who will meet the 5th seed, Taylor Fritz, in the last 4. The American reached the semi-finals for the first time, and it was watched by our reporter on Court 1, John Wilkinson.
And but for a third set blow, he would have made serene progress against Karen Khachanov. He took the first 2 sets in dominant fashion, did Fritz, winning 90% of his first serve points, only to suffer in what was an error-strewn third set. Though in fairness, Khachanov had also belatedly started to deliver on court. Fritz saved the best for last, though, with 3 of his 10 aces coming in the 4th set tiebreak. And having reached last year's US Open final, Fritz says that's helped him as he reaches the latter stages of another Grand Slam.
I've got a lot of confidence in those moments and situations that, you know, I can, just having been there, then I can do it again. I think I've said this a couple times, but I feel like other years that I was in the quarterfinals here specifically, it felt like a really big deal for me. And going into the match today, I was much more calm and relaxed, and it didn't feel like that, just having the experience of, you know, making some deep runs and some slams over the last couple of years. And I think the same goes for, you know, having that win in the US Open. It gives me a lot of confidence that I've been here before, and it's not, I don't know, I've played the pressure matches. I don't think it's going to get, you know, anything's going to get more stressful than me playing Francis in New York for a spot in the final.
So he's had those big experiences, has Taylor Fritz, and come through them, and has played in a major final at the US Open last year. So then, how do you think Alcaraz will get on then against Fritz? Tall, big serving American. They've met a couple of times before on hard courts. It's gone the Spaniards' way. How do you see it going on Friday?
Yeah, the only thing I don't trust on Taylor Fritz to get an upset in this match is his mentality in these big moments. I always remember when I think about Taylor Fritz, his match here in 2022 against Rafa Nadal, when he got a tear on his abs and he could barely serve, and still Nadal was able to clinch that match. Fritz has improved since then. He made his first final in the US Open, first semi-final here, finally breaking that barrier of the quarters final. But I want to see if he has the mentality and the mental strength to fight against Carlos Alcaraz, because Alcaraz is not going to be a player that is going to give up in 3 sets. You know, if you want to beat him, it's going to be 4 hours, maybe 5 sets. It's going to be tough. So I want to see if he's able to hang on in those nervous moments, and it's a challenge for him. And I think it's going to be a big opportunity for him to show that he can make it. I will still pick Alcaraz. It's obviously going to be a different challenge that is being Rublev or is being Norrie, but I will still pick Alcaraz.
Well, because I know Carlos Alcaraz will be speaking very soon to the media. Thank you so much, as always. Manuel Gomez with us here on centre court. Taylor Fritz, then, one of 2 US players in the quarter-finals. Fritz has gone through to the last 4. Ben Shelton will hope to do the same when he plays the men's number 1, Yannick Sinner, on Wednesday. We can hear now from the former American tennis player, Sam Querrey, who won 10 titles on the tour during his career. He reached the Wimbledon semi-final in 2017, losing to Marin Cilic and knocking out the defending champion Andy Murray along the way. Djokovic here to reach the quarterfinals in the previous year. We'll get Sam's thoughts then on the Serb's quest for an 8th Wimbledon title. First, though, could an American man win a Grand Slam for the first time since 2003? Well, I spoke to Querrey ahead of his invitational doubles match. He's playing alongside his American compatriot James Blake, and asked what advice he would have first of all for the USA's Ben Shelton before he plays in his first Wimbledon quarterfinal.
No advice that's going to help him. I mean, go out there and play big and be confident, but he does that better than I did, or better than almost everyone does. So even though he's playing center, I think he's like relishes that. Getting to play the number 1 player in the world on probably center court at Wimbledon, he's like, bring it on. I'm ready for that. So I think I expect him to go out and play well, whether he wins or loses.
And Sinner, does he put that performance behind him then and come again stronger in a quarter-final? How tough is it to have been in that position, knowing that you were 2 sets down?
Yeah, assuming he's healthy, I expect him to play unbelievable. You know, it's almost like playing a lucky loser or playing someone that saved match points in previous rounds. When you're advanced in a tournament, when you maybe shouldn't have, you're playing with house money, and those players are always really dangerous. And Sinner was already really dangerous.
Is this the year when the American man wins the Grand Slam since 2003?
I hope so, but if I had to throw a wager on it, I can't with Sinner, Alcaraz, and Novak looming in all the quarters. Outside of Alcaraz, Sinner might be the next most confident guy in grass, winning, I think it's 12 matches on grass now. He's among Stuttgart, Eastbourne, and here. I think he's good. He got that
semi walkover in the previous match. His body's got to be feeling good, and he's a guy like Ben. He just oozes confidence when he steps on the court.
How difficult is it in your era, of course, with the giants of the game, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray, and now, of course, with Alcaraz and Sinner there at the very top? It's tough, isn't it, to win a major?
It's so tough, and I don't know if I ever actually believed I could. Getting to a tournament, I don't know deep down if I ever thought I can win this, because I'm going to have to beat at least 2 of those 3, maybe 3 of those 3. And that's a tough feeling going into a major. There's everyone now, I think, kind of has that feeling of, can I beat Sinner and Alcaraz back to back? You can tell yourself you can, but whether you really believe it or not is a different story.
And for the ultimate title, Carlos Alcaraz, if he wins a third, are we in an Alcaraz era then? It's dominance, isn't it?
Yeah, we might already be in one. It'd be pretty cool for him to go Roland Garros Wimbledon, Roland Garros Wimbledon, back to back. I think outside of Federer, maybe could be the only guy to do that. It just shows how versatile his game is, and we don't have those surface specialists anymore for the most part. Everyone kind of plays the same, so the difference or the transition from clay to grass is kind of the same for everyone now. And you get the extra week of time now compared to 8-10 years ago, so it's a non-issue for all these players. But regardless, we're in an Alcaraz era.
Alcaraz is your tip then for the title?
I'm going Novak. I think he's going to empty the tank and maybe get it done. But I don't really feel good about the call.
To get over the line, though, to win a 25th major, we've seen him when he was on 99 hotels and trying to get the Olympics. It's a tough one, isn't it, to get over that?
It's very tough. I compared it, I said this earlier, to the Olympics last year. I feel like to get that gold medal, his last chance, and you just saw the emotion afterwards, and it was like he was almost dead afterwards. So much had come out emotionally, and I feel like he looks at this as probably his last best chance to win a major, and so I kind of expect him to just give every ounce of energy he has to try to get through 3 more matches.
How fun for you to get back on the court there at Wimbledon?
Oh yeah, and I'm playing with James Blake, who's one of my good buddies, so there's no pressure, and you can just practice on these courts and stuff, so to get to play this is pretty cool.
That is the former US player Sam Querrey. You're with Sport Today on the BBC World Service. Back to the main action, a real epic on centre court. The German Lara Siegmund producing one of the performances of her career to almost knock out the world's best player, Arina Sabalenka. She was making her centre court debut at the age of 37. She didn't have the power of her opponent, but her court craft or shot making made it extremely difficult. Siegmund took the first set 6-4. We saw Sabalenka's frustrations, but she levelled the match 6-2 in the second set, and after 3 breaks of serve in a row, edged ahead in the deciding set, eventually coming through 6-4. So how was Sabalenka able to overcome everything Siegmund threw at her?
That was a real task, and I had to work really hard to get the win, and that was a very tricky match, and I'm super proud of the way I handled myself and of course the way I played.
Were there moments during it where perhaps in the past you would have thought, I'm out of this, and today you were able to fight back?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think maybe in the past I would completely lose myself. I would let my emotions get over it and get over me, and probably I would just easily lose this match. But today I was staying there in some tough moments. I was reminding myself, it's a quarterfinals of a Grand Slam. It's always been my dream. I'm here, I'm fighting, just never give up, keep pushing, keep trying. And I was just reminding myself how much I wanted to be where I am, and I think it's really helped me mentally to be strong and to handle those tricky situations.
After Arina Sabalenka with the BBC's Laura Scott, and we can hear from a Wimbledon finalist now. Agnieszka Radwanska became the first Polish player in the Open era to play a major singles final. It was here at Wimbledon in 2012 when she lost to Serena Williams. We'll get her thoughts on whether her compatriot Iga Świątek can go further and win Wimbledon for the first time. She plays Ludmila Samsonova on Wednesday. First, though, how impressed has Radwanska been with Sabalenka's mentality after losing the French Open final to come here to Wimbledon?
really big respect for Sabalenka because she can really play a great game even after the really tough loss. I think after a couple of days, I think she can really actually leave everything behind and start over and over again. So, of course, that for sure it was a painful loss, but here we can see her fresh, ready, and ready for the next title. So, I think, she's always interesting when we see her, but really not that great after the last tournament.
What have you made of the tournament so far, the surprises we've had, and here we are at the quarterfinal stage?
Yes, well, I think we can see a lot of surprises in the first round. Remember, there have been a couple of first years that you can see all those different results and having a lot of seeds actually out in the first round. I don't know what was that, but I think when it's very hard, and I think the grass is a bit slower as well, I think we can see all those results like that. Compared to other Grand Slam, a lot of things happening actually here in the surface, so it is surprising, but on the other hand side, not that much.
Can I just ask you about Iga Świątek's chances here? Given those conditions, do you think this is perhaps a best chance? Has she got the game that can win Wimbledon?
I think so. I think when she's having more time during the race, I think it's better for her. So when the ball is not slipping on the surface and the bounce is higher, it's definitely better for her. So with the weather like that, even like today or probably tomorrow is even warmer, I think it's better for her.
Agnieszka Radwanska with Świątek in action on Wednesday. Aryna Sabalenka will meet the American 13th seed Amanda Anisimova after her victory on Court 1, John.
And Anisimova was a deserving winner against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, who she beat for a fourth time. The American is into her first Wimbledon semi-final, and consider this, she has a winning record against Aryna Sabalenka.
Thanks, John.
Live from Centerpool, this is Sport Today with Lee James.
Back here at Wimbledon shortly, but to football now. Chelsea take on a familiar face when they play against Fluminense in the first of the Club World Cup semi-finals. Their former defender Thiago Silva, at the age of 40, is leading the Brazilian side, who have fought off relegation in their domestic league and defied the odds to reach the last four. Fluminense are an experienced team, and the Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca believes it's a good chance for his young squad to test themselves.
We already one entire season together, being the youngest squad in the Premier League. We face team with more experience than us. We were able to do a lot more, to win again, not win again. We are probably the first or the second youngest squad in this competition, and we're going to face probably the oldest one, and it's also a good test for this.
That's Enzo Maresca. The South American football expert Tim Vickery is with us on Sport Today. Maresca saying there, Tim, this match is going to be a good test for his young side. How surprising that test is coming against Fluminense, their opponent, since winning that Copa Libertadores. As I mentioned, they've narrowly avoided relegation. They've been going through managers as well in recent years.
No one saw this coming. They really didn't. I don't think many people imagined them they would get past Inter Milan or even Al Hilal. But here they are, just 2 games away from being very, very unlikely Club World Champions. What a journey it's been. What a fantastic story. And so many of the great stories in this tournament have come from Fluminense. You mentioned Thiago Silva there, but he's a spring chicken next to the goalkeeper. Fabio, 44 years of age. Fabio was picked by Brazil many times, but never got on the field. Has never actually played for Brazil at that senior level, and I would question whether at 44 time might be running out for him to get a Brazil cap. So this is his everything. This is all his World Cups mixed into one. So he's a great story. Thiago Silva, fabulous story, because not least because he used to play for Chelsea. John Arias, a candidate for the player of the tournament, I think, the little squat Colombian. What on earth is he not doing in European football? You ask that question to John Arias, he would clearly agree. He would love to be there, but he's not. And Europe's loss is Fluminense's gain. And who knows? Maybe they've got a sniper's chance of getting past Chelsea and keeping the dream going.
Yeah, and the management of Renato Gaucho then, with that experience you've been talking about, in particular from Thiago Silva as the captain, as the leader, can they cause this young Chelsea side significant problems then? Can they find a way to reach the final?
Well, once more, they will have to accept that their opponent is the more dangerous side, and they will look to be on the back foot, but they will not be passive. The coach there, you mentioned him, Renato Portaluppi, or Renato Gaúcho as his nickname. He was the coach of Grêmio when they played Real Madrid in the final of the Intercontinental in Abu Dhabi back in 2017. And his Grêmio side hardly left his own half. And they lost 1-0 and seemed happy to lose 1-0. And Renato was very disappointed by that. He's thought he's been over this game many, many times since. And he thought, we were too passive. There will be moments in the game where we need to really put our foot on the accelerator and attack. And the first goal that they scored right at the start of the game against Inter Milan, they sensed the opportunity and they had 4 or 5 players all attacking the Inter Milan penalty area at the same time. So that is what I think Fluminense will seek to do. They will seek to hold Chelsea, to block them in midfield and take their opportunities and take them with surgical precision.
That's Tim Vickery. At the Women's European Championship, the 8-time winners Germany have beaten Denmark 2-1 in Basel. Amelie Vansgaard's opener for the Danes was cancelled out by Sioka Nieskin's penalty, and Leah Schur scored the winner. Germany will progress to the last 8 if Poland fail to beat Sweden later. So how impressive were the Germans? The women's football reporter Sophie Lawson was watching.
I think impressive in that they came from behind, but they played some incredibly ugly football. I think their passing was a little bit off. They really weren't comfortable, but they got through, they got the win, and that's the important thing, and that's their jumping off point. They had a couple of interventions in the first half that didn't go their way, and a couple, one after the break we did the penalty. You could say it was soft, but I think there's some cold contact in there, and possibly the ref could have whistled for a head injury in the build-up to the winning goal, but I think Germany got the rub of the green when they needed it, and we saw some of the good football we know they can produce, but it's still looking a little bit rough and ready.
Germany with a place in the knockout rounds, then if Sweden avoid defeat against Poland, that kicks off shortly. It could lead to Denmark's elimination, of course, or a lot on this. How do you see this going?
I think Sweden have the potential to play very good football, but they also have the potential to kind of get those scruffy 1-0s and get through. I think we saw a little bit of that against Denmark. Likewise, last time out we saw Poland play some really, really good defensive football, so I'm expecting them to give Sweden quite a headache in defence, and we know Poland are very good in the transitions. They can attack really quickly, so I'm hoping for a fun game, a type of transitional game from this one. I think Sweden are the heavy favourites, but I'm also expecting at least one Poland goal, so it could go either way.
That's Sophie Lawson. Elsewhere this Tuesday in cricket, South Africa have wrapped up a resounding victory over Zimbabwe by an innings and 236 runs in the second test in Bulawayo. They take the series 2-0. The match will be remembered for the South African captain Bian Mulder, scoring a national record of 367. The defending champion, Prelay Pogacar, outsprinted his rivals as he claimed his 100th professional victory in stage 4 of the Tour de France. The result means the Slovenian moves level at the top of the general classification, with Matteo van der Poel, who retains the leader's yellow jersey, on countback. And in basketball, Indiana Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton will miss the entire NBA season after having surgery to repair a torn right Achilles tendon. Back here at Wimbledon then, we've got more quarterfinals on Wednesday. John Wilkinson is with us again, and we've got the 18-year-old Mira Andreeva looking to progress, John, with the vast experience of a Wimbledon champion with her.
She's coached by the 1994 Wimbledon champion Conchita Martinez, and as a coach she guided Garbiñe Muguruza to the title 8 years ago. And when I spoke to Martinez, I started by asking if she was getting the winning feeling again with Andreeva.
Well, I mean, she's in the quarterfinals now. We had to stay with the feet on the ground, very focused, and continue to do the same things that have worked until now. So, yeah, I don't want to think beyond this point.
And how are you going to keep her calm, stop her from getting too far ahead?
No, I mean, it's like doing routines, same routines, good practices, like I said, keeping the focus, and I think she's in a good frame of mind.
And does she seem to you a more focused player? Have you been able to calm her on the court whilst keeping her personality?
Well, I mean, I think this is impossible to keep the same focus for your whole career. You're going to have up and downs. But she's been doing very, very good in this tournament, and I hope she continues to do that because it's something that we spoke about.
Has she surprised you, her qualities at her age?
Not really. I mean, I think she's an amazing player. She's very talented, and I know if she does the right things, I know what she can do, and I think we're seeing it right now.
Conchita Martinez there, the coach of Mira Andreeva, who faces Belinda Bencic in the quarterfinals.
Yes, the quarterfinals continue on Wednesday, including Novak Djokovic match with Flavio Caboli and with Yannick Sinner in action against Ben Shelton. You can follow all the action from Wimbledon across on the BBC World Service. We'll be back for you at the same time on Wednesday to round everything up from day 10. But from all of us here on Sport Today, it's goodbye.
Sport Today is